Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shamakunda Radha Kunda Gir Govardhan ki jai. Sri Vrindavan Mathura Dham ki jai. Sri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki jai. Sri Ayodhya Dham ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Yagya ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to you, Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale. Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Samniti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve. Gauravani Pracharine Nivasesha Sunyavadi Paschata Desatarane. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Janakra Salakaya Chaklus Unimiritan Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnuvaraya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarane. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing our readings from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9. We're finishing chapter 11. Lord Ramachandra rules the world. And if we can, we'll start chapter 12, the dynasty of Kusha. You're having a celebration of Shivaratri today? Or yesterday? It was yesterday? By Vaishnava what? I can't hear you. So it's today. So we should just say a few words about Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna. He is described in many different ways in the Vedic literatures and in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's declared that he's the greatest Vaishnava. He's known as one of the 3 Guna avatars of the universe. The Guna avatars are Lord Vishnu for the Sattvagun, Lord Brahma for the Rajagun, and Lord Shiva for the Tamagun. That means people who are under that influence of the Tamagun. He's very merciful to them. If they worship him properly, he will give them, he will elevate them out of that tamagun. But he is much more than just the Guna avatar of our universe. Unlike the Lord Brahma, who is the most elevated jiva, firstborn in the universe, Jiva Tattva. Lord Shiva is not Jiva Tattva. Lord Shiva is not a Atma particle, a spirit soul, as we are. There are countless universes beyond our ability to have a number. In each and every one of them, Lord Shiva enters. In every one simultaneously, he is manifesting himself. Just as Lord Vishnu enters each and every universe manifesting himself, so does Lord Shiva. And within that universe, and each and every one of those universes, at the end of each day of Brahma, which is what? How many kalpas? 1,000? At the end of each day, so 4,300,000 times 1,000 is 4 billion. 300 million of our years. There is a devastation of all the planetary systems except the highest planets. And Lord Shiva causes that devastation as part of the cycling of time in every single universe. And Lord Shiva is responsible for taking every one of the jiva. There are countless, billions, infinite numbers of jivas in the prison of the material world, which is just a tiny portion of the total number of jivas. The rest being sane and pure live in the spiritual world. But the bad jivas, if you want to call them that, the criminal jivas, the jivas that wanted not to be servant of God, but were so envious of God and his opulence, they wanted that for themselves. Those jivas that are sent into this material world, they have their life cycles, millions of births, millions of births, millions of births. At the end of a day of Brahma, Lord Shiva very carefully collects every single jiva and causes them to be unconscious and places them back inside the Garbhodakshayi Vishnu of that universe. He is doing that to every jiva, gently taking them out of their bodies and putting them into the body of Vishnu until the night of Brahma is finished. The next day begins, another cycle of time, another cycle of manifesting the universe, the planets, the different species, when Lord Vishnu, Garbhodak Vishnu, has them emanate out of his body. In this way, every single day when it ends of Lord Brahma, times 360 days, or 1 year, times 100 years, Lord Shiva is doing this. And then at the very end of the lifetime of Lord Brahma, there is another pastime of Lord Shiva. Now there is a total devastation, including the highest planets of the universe, everything. And during that time, Lord Shiva's service is to take every single jiva in every single universe and place them back into the body of Karanadakshayi Vishnu. And when the time is appropriate, that Karanadakshayi Vishnu, Mahavishnu, breathes out billions of universes again, and then glances over them and awakens his energies, and through his glance, he injects all those souls that were placed inside him into their respective universes. So in this way, these are Lord Shiva pastimes, taking all the souls and putting them back into the body of Vishnu. Endless pastimes of Lord Shiva. What power is that? And Lord Shiva's abode is outside of this material universe and its layers of material energy. And he is a guardian between the material with the material worlds and the Vaikuntha planet, the Vaikuntha worlds, the spiritual worlds. He only allows souls that are completely free from all contamination, 100% pure lovers of God. He only allows those souls to pass through into the Vaikuntha worlds. Any other soul that still has a tinge of material attachment, he is the guardian that keeps them still in their material universe. These are some of his amazing powers and pastimes in his service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, naturally, we worship and respect Lord Shiva as the greatest devotee in the understanding these services that he does. And there's so many more, but I mean, that's just a taste of Lord Shiva. So yesterday, we read this amazing description of how in the kingdom of Lord Ram, in his capital city of Ayodhya, the walkways, the pathways, the streets, they were so spotless as if they were completely brand new at every moment. They appeared like that. And every street, every walkway, every pathway was scented with the fragrances of the spiritual world. That was just how he arranged the paths and the streets of his kingdom. So we're continuing to read about the kingdom of Lord Ram. In text 27, I'll just read the English. The palaces, the palace gates, the assembly houses, the platforms for meeting places, the temples, and all such places were decorated with golden water pots and bedecked with various types of flags. Wherever Lord Ramachandra visited, auspicious welcome gates were constructed with banana leaves and betel nut trees, full of flowers, full of fruits. Every single fence full of flowers and fruits in a whole city of fences and gates. The gates were decorated with various flags made of colorful cloths and with tapestries, mirrors, and garlands. All of this on every fence, every gate, throughout a whole city. Wherever Lord Ramachandra visited, the people approached him with paraphernalia of worship and begged the Lord's blessings. "O Lord," they said, "as you rescued the earth from the bottom of the sea in your incarnation as a boar, may you now maintain it. Thus we beg your blessings." Thereafter, not having seen the Lord for a long time, the citizens, both men and women, being very eager to see him, left their homes and got up on the roofs of the palaces. Apparently, the city was filled with palaces. being incompletely satiated with seeing the face of the lotus-eyed Lord Ramachandra, they couldn't get enough, that's what it means. They couldn't get enough of seeing him, and they showered flowers upon him. Thereafter, Lord Ramachandra entered the palace of his forefathers. Within the palace were various treasures and valuable wardrobes. The sitting places on the two sides of the entrance door were made of coral. The yards were surrounded by pillars of Vaidurya Mani, jeweled pillars. The floor was made of highly polished Marakata Mani. These are valuable jewels and stones not found currently on this earth. They're a heavenly world. The foundation was made of marble. The entire palace was decorated with flags, garlands, and bedecked with valuable stones, shining with a celestial effulgence. So what does a celestial effulgence look like? You look at the sun, you'll see what celestial effulgence is. The palace was effulgent like a sun. The palace was fully decorated with pearls, surrounded by lamps and incense. The men and the women within the palace all resembled demigods. That means their bodies were effulgent and were decorated with various ornaments which seemed beautiful because of being placed on their bodies. Lord Ramachandra, the supreme personality of Godhead, chief of the best learned scholars, resided in that palace with his pleasure potency, Mother Sita, and enjoyed complete peace. Without transgressing the religious principles, Lord Ramachandra, whose lotus feet are worshipped by devotees in meditation, enjoyed with all the paraphernalia of transcendental pleasure for as long as needed. So, I just want to remind again, all of us, that when the Lord descends in one of his original forms, his abode also descends into the material universe. So during the time of this Lord Ram, Ayodhya in the spiritual sky, that Vaikuntha world was manifest here on this earthly plane. And how do we know that? Again, from the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, Nadi vyadi jara glani dukkha shoka baya klamaha mityus chani chatam nasid rame rajan yadhokshaje there was not any of the following things did not exist in his kingdom. So what are those things? All bodily and mental suffering did not exist in his kingdom. This is Vaikuntha manifest here. And for how many thousands and thousands and thousands of years he lived and ruled in this kingdom of Ayodhya. No bodily or mental suffering. Sometimes people cannot go even a day without bodily suffering. Sometimes they can't go for even an hour without mental suffering. Here there was, for endless almost time, no mental suffering, no bodily suffering. What else there was none of? There was no disease in his kingdom. In other words, the action of the material energy was suspended. The working of material nature just stopped working in its normal way. It was completely suspended. There was no disease. The normal condition of every body is to become diseased. There was no disease. There was no old age in his kingdom. That is the laws of nature being suspended. There was no one who was old for thousands and thousands of years. There was no bereavement, sorrow over a lost one. There was no bereavement. There was no lamentation. I need something, I didn't get something, I'm lamenting, I didn't have a wife or this thing or that. No, there was no such thing as lamentation in his kingdom. There was no distress. There was no fear. We live in the age of fear. We're fearful how we're going to even have a house and a roof over our head. How are we going to feed our family? We're fearful of everything in this age. In this kingdom, there was no such fear of anything. I love this next one. There was no fatigue. So don't look tired. If you're tired, stand up. Shake it off. There was no fatigue in Lord Ram's kingdom. These were completely absent. And then finally, in the Bhagavatam it says, there was even no death for those who did not want it. This is the kingdom of Lord Ram. When you see those deities, remember this verse. Just understand what came down into the world with those deities when they appeared 1,000,000 years ago. And in that kingdom, the material energy of earth was producing jewels and stones that only exist on the highest planets of the universe. So not only was the material energy suspended, but it was made to work in wonderful, wondrous, amazing ways. That's the kingdom of Lord Ram that we've just read about. Naturally, the citizens were in love with him. How could they not be? Naturally, the citizens were addicted to seeing him and worshiping him and serving him and glorifying him and working for him in every way. They were completely addicted. There was no room in their hearts for any other feeling. So that is how Lord Ramachandra ruled the world. And by the way, those of you who are from this yatra, you're his servants. Just as he sent out his brothers to expand this kingdom, so you, by his divine order, are sent out all the time to expand the kingdom of Krishna consciousness, to expand this Vaikuntha consciousness throughout this material world. And just as by his divine potencies, the material energies were suspended in the way they were working, so when you are sent out by this Sitaram, by Lord Sitaram, Sri Sitaram, you are empowered in such a way, whether you know this, you are empowered to act and to preach in such a way that counteracts the working of the material energy of the Lord. And what do we mean by that? Well, just consider the position of the jiva in this material prison, this marchalok, this place. The whole universe is a prison for the jivas. And their cell is chained in such a way that materially there's no hope for them to ever escape their prison. Materially. The chains of the prison house of every jiva in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, those chains are compared to very tight knots. And the heart, where the jiva is, the heart of the jiva is tied to the material energy by these knots. And what are these knots, these chains? The first one, Prabhupada says, this is going back to the very first canto. I think it's in the second chapter. Vijite hridaya grantis chijante samshaya. Those knots that have to be cut for the jiva to be released begin, the first knot is when the jiva is so envious of God. God is enjoying with his goddess of fortune. God is enjoying with his queens. God is enjoying with the gopis. I want that type of enjoyment, that envy, that desire. I want sex for me, not for the pleasure of God, but for the pleasure of me. That's the very first knot, that sex desire. And what comes out from that knot? Then you have to find a husband or a wife and become attached to that body, another knot. And then you have to have some place where you're going to shelter that husband or take care of that wife or take care of that husband. Some home, some land, another knot, another knot. And then inside you have to have material paraphernalia to excite your senses so that you'll keep thinking about having sex. Another knot. And you have to work to get all this. Another knot. And then you start to have byproducts, children. Each one another knot. Another chain on the prison. And social feelings are there, so you have to make friends. More knots. You identify with a community, more knots. Being identified with your body, you identify with a nation. Oh, I am Indian, I am American, more knots. Okay, in every time you take another birth, sex desire starts again. More knots. By the time you get to having a human body, we have passed through 8 million different species of bodies hankering for sex. Just to get our first human body, that's what we go through. How many chains are on our prison? How many knots have there been from that journey? And after this human body is finished, for most poor souls who don't become elevated, but who have to accept their karma as their next body, wherever it sends them, and they start again climbing towards a human birth. How many times have we gone through this? We couldn't begin to count the number of knots in our heart. We couldn't begin to count the chains on the cell, the prison that we inhabit, because they're all carried subtly from one gross body to another. They're not left behind when you quit the body. Those knots are carried into your next birth. So, nityabadha, eternally conditioned, eternally prisoned. There is no escape, no amount of material effort, no amount of material opulence, no amount of material fame or strength or knowledge, material, there is no way that the material energy by itself you can control it enough to release you from all of this. It's not possible. We are eternally in a prison until the Lord descends or until he sends out his servants. And the servants of Lord Ram, of Sita Ram, of Gauranga and Nitai, of Radha and Rasabihari, when they are sent out to expand the kingdom of God, with that order comes a potency that you just start carrying. And when you become so sincere, when you hanker enough to want to save these souls that are imprisoned, when you become, we'll use this word, addicted, like the heaviest drug in the material world causes addiction, when you become even more than that, addicted to saving souls, this potency that is within the Lord's order starts acting through each one of you. And it pierces those knots. It cuts them to pieces. And it can release that soul. Right the first time you start preaching, if you're that addicted to preaching, that potency can cut those knots and give that soul a glimpse of itself and of the kingdom of God and of what this material prison is. You carry that potency to the degree that you are sincere and pure in your desire to save other souls from this prison. You carry the potency to pierce those knots. That is what is given in the order of the Lord when he sends his servants out to expand the kingdom of God. So don't forget that. Understand what that kingdom is. Pray to those deities and pray to be that addicted, that sincere for preaching, that potency will actually be like a current, and you'll just be like some instrument that is in the hands of the Lord, cutting the knots of everyone's prison that you come up to. It is possible to do this, no matter how covered that soul is. We have heard amazing Sankirtan stories of the greatest, most envious souls, and the devotee preaches to them and gets them to take Krishna's mercy, somehow finds the way to touch that envious soul in such a way that it cuts through those knots, and it makes him somehow favorable at that moment. And don't forget what Krishna's promise is in Bhagavad Gita. That soul that you have gotten to take its first step towards Krishna consciousness, even if in its whole rest of its life it doesn't take another step, in its next birth it will begin where it left off. No material position stays with the soul when it travels after this body to its next birth. But any spiritual step, any spiritual advancement travels with that soul, it begins where it left off, where he or she left off. You are saving those souls just by getting them to take this first step. This is how gradually, this movement has only been here in the modern age for 50 years outside of India. And in hundreds and hundreds of years from now, these souls that got books in the 1970s and the 1980s and the 1990s and now in the 2000s, these souls are going to be filling up the earth and filling up the universe as devotees. I once asked Prabhupada, how is it that you say the kingdom of God's going to reappear during this golden age of this, within this Kali Yuga? How do you say classic Vedic culture is going to exist again? Is it going to be like a revolution? Some small number of powerful devotee kshatriyas taking over a country and making it a Krishna-conscious country? Prabhupada said, no, that's not how it will happen. It's going to happen from what we just talked about, this process of Sankirtan, and these souls taking more births and beginning where they left off. Eventually, there will be so many souls open to devotion that the masses of population will insist, demand a Krishna-conscious government, a Krishna-conscious country, a Krishna-conscious city, a Krishna-conscious world. This future is awaiting all these souls that you preach to and give Krishna's mercy to. This is the order from these deities to go out and spread this kingdom of God. And you are their instruments. And to the degree that you are really sincere, ardent, praying that I don't want anything else, just you. I just want to please you, my Lord, and I know this is what pleases you the most. So I give you my body, my words, my intelligence, my mind, my energy. Use me. Just use me any way you like for this mission. Because I know this pleases you the most. So this is what I'm praying for every time I am calling to you. I am chanting, Hare, please, let me love you in that way. Krishna, let me be attracted to you in this way, that I give you everything that I have for this mission. So every time we call to Krishna, if we're that sincere, yes, that emotion develops in your own heart. You begin to feel as you're chanting this Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As you're chanting this in your heart, as it becomes cleansed and dusted, this addiction that we're talking about, you start hankering for it. You're praying for it with every utterance of the holy name. You want it more and more and more. You're in a trance when you're chanting that you can't think of anything else. You don't chant distracted. Stay focused and let the holy names act. Let them sweep away all the dust and awaken such emotions in you, so that you get to the point where every time you start chanting, you pick up where you just left off the last time you chanted, praying to be even more intensely the instrument of the Lord. This is the best way to chant your rounds, and to chant in kirtan. Whenever you chant and call out to Krishna to serve his mission, because that is the order for every one of us. So thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of this 9th canto, 11th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Ramachandra Rules the World, and how his devotees here will spread this kingdom of Lord Ram. So now we start the next chapter, his dynasty. And we're going to read names, and sometimes these histories devotees wonder, what's the point of hearing these names? I don't know who these persons are. What's the point of these dynasties being recited? Well, the point is these are the great leaders of the kingdom of God that was established, continuing it. That's the point. Just like we have our Prabhupada, and when we think of those devotees who were very close to Prabhupada, we could name them, those who are like great leaders in our movement. And the next generation will have, from their disciples, great leaders. And so 1,000 years, they may not know what those names are, but they will be those who sustained and maintained and expanded this kingdom of Krishna consciousness until the whole world was flooded with the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So when we read this dynasty now, and we wonder, why am I hearing these names? It's because they were empowered to continue and expand and maintain this Vaikuntha kingdom here on earth. So this chapter describes the dynasty of Kusha, the son of Lord Ramachandra. The members of this dynasty are descendants of Shashada, the son of Maharaj Ikshvaku. Following in the genealogical table of Lord Ramachandra's dynasty, Kusha, the Lord's son, was followed consecutively by Atiti, Nishada, Nabha, Pundarik, Kshemadhanva, Devanika, Aniha, Pariyatra, Balastala, Brajanava, Sagana, and Vidriti. These are just great souls that were complete 100% servants of Lord Ram. These personalities ruled the world. From Vidriti came Hiranyanava, who later became the disciple of Jaimini and propounded the system of mystic yoga in which Yajnavalkya was initiated. Following in this dynasty were Pushpa, Dhruvasandi, Sudarshan, Agnivarna, Shigra, and Maru. Maru attained full perfection in the practice of yoga, and interestingly, he still lives in the village of Kalapa. At the end of the age of Kali, he will revive the dynasty of the sun god for the next Satya Yuga. So he's keeping himself for hundreds of thousands of years, waiting for the end of Kali. Next in the dynasty were Prasushruta, Sandhi, Amarshana, Mahatman, Vishwabhu, Prasenajit, Takshaka, and Brihadbala, who was later killed by Abhimanyu. Shukadev Goswami said, these were all kings who had passed away. The future descendants of Brihadbala will be Brihadrana, Urukriya, Vatsaridha, Prativyoma, Banu, Divaka, Sahadev, Brihashadav, Banuman, Pratikshashva, Supratika, Marudeva, Sunakshatra, Pushkar, Antariksha, Sutapa, Amitrajit, Brihadraja, Barhi, Kritanjaya, Rananjaya, Sanjaya, Shakya, Shuddha, Langala, Prasenajit, Kshudraka, Ranaka, it's very melodic, Surata, and Sumitra. All of them will become kings, one after another. Sumitra, coming in this age of Kali, will be the last king in the Ikshvaku dynasty. After him, the dynasty will be extinguished. It merges into the dynasties of the moon god, from the sun god to the moon god. Anyway, this history of those who produced the kingdom of God for the souls of their times, you know, if you ever had to endure going to a movie, at the end of the movie, there are rolls and screenshots of credits. And the more complex the movie, the more names appear. That it took all these people to make this 2-hour presentation. So here is a short list of persons who caused a 1,000,000-year presentation. 1,000,000 years of the kingdom of Ram throughout the Treta dynasty and the Treta Yuga and then the Dwapara Yuga. It's a short list compared to what you endure for a 2-hour movie. These are the credits of our universe. So we have a few more minutes. Text 1, Shukadev Goswami said, the son of Ramachandra was Kusha. The son of Kusha was Atiti. The son of Atiti was Nishada. The son of Nishada was Naba. The son of Naba was Pundarik. From Pundarik came a son named Kshemadhanva. The son of Kshemadhanva was Devanika. Devanika's son was Aniha. Aniha's son was Pariyatra. And Pariyatra's son was Balastala. The son of Balastala was Bradranaba, who was said to have been born from the effulgence of the sun god. Clearly, we are hearing about something that goes beyond our dull, limited senses in this age of Kali. How does a person get born out of the effulgence of the sun? We have no conception of how the universal energies are working. We're so busy thinking that we're so important here on earth and we're becoming the masters of the universe and we're learning the secrets of the universe by seeing how the energies work in a tiny little lab, which is a room, in a tiny little building, in a tiny little city, which is a speck on a tiny little planet. And we're so proud that we're studying how the energy of nature work in that place. And our stupidity is, the energies that we see in this little tiny spot, this is how these energies work everywhere in the universe? What kind of nonsense assumption is that? Why, in the name of science, would anyone think that's how energies work in places you've never been to and can't examine and can't test? Then why do we insist, but that's how energy works? These are the laws of nature. This is our universe. Because I saw it in the tiny speck of a room, in a tiny speck of a city, in a tiny speck of a planet. I have figured out how the universe works. I've decided that in places I can never get to, these energies work exactly the way I saw them in this little tiny corner, this little tiny place. What arrogance, what silliness our modern so-called scientists think like this. The son of Vajranabha was Sagana, and his son was Vidriti. The son of Vidriti was Hiranyanava, who became a disciple of Jaimini and became a great acharya of mystic yoga. It is from Hiranyanava that the great saint Yajnavalkya learned the highly elevated system of mystic yoga known as Adhyatma Yoga. Are there any schools of Adhyatma Yoga around? I don't think so. They have reduced the practice of yoga to some silly asanas and a few breathing exercises, and they think they're yogis. This mystic yoga known as Adhyatma, which can loosen the knots of material attachment in the heart. The son of Hiranyava was Pushna, and the son of Pushpa was Dhruva Sandhi. The son of Dhruva Sandhi was Sudarshan, whose son was Agnivarna. The son of Agnivarna was named Sigra, and his son was Maru. And now we're up to text 6, which has a purport. So we can read the Sanskrit together. Please repeat. Sosavaste yoga siddha, Sosavaste Kalapa graman astita Kalapa graman astita Kalapa graman astita Kaler ante surya vamsam Nashtam bhavayita puna Nashtam bhavayita puna. And because we're out of time, we'll just keep reading. Having achieved perfection in the power of mystic yoga, Maru, that's why we know this yoga doesn't exist in any of these yoga places. The power of this yoga enabled Mara to still live. So this is from almost 1 million years ago. He still lives in a place known as Kalapagram. And at the end of Kali Yuga, which is another 400,000 some years, right? He will revive the lost Surya dynasty by begetting a son. The yoga can give that power. Amazing. At least 5,000 years ago, Srila Shukadev Goswami ascertained the existence of Maru in Kalapagram and said that Maru, having achieved a yoga siddha body, would continue to exist until the end of Kali Yuga, which is calculated to continue for 432,000 years. Such is the perfection of mystic power. By controlling the breath, the perfect yogi continues his life for as long as he likes. He just suspends whatever energy causes the body to get old. He just suspends whatever that is by his mystic power. Sometimes we hear from the Vedic literatures that some personalities from the Vedic age, such as Vyasadeva and Ashvatthama, are still living. Here we understand that Maru is also still living. We are sometimes surprised that a mortal body can live for such a long time. The explanation of this longevity is given here by the word yoga siddha. If one becomes perfect in the practice of yoga, he can live as long as he likes. The demonstration of some trifling yoga siddha does not constitute perfection. Here's a factual example of perfection. A yoga siddha can live as long as he likes. So when Prabhupada came to America, it was very interesting. America had become very fascinated with India and yogis from India. It was a fashion, a trend, a fascination. And these yogis who were getting some flickering fame in the world had minute little powers. But every one of them today is already dead. So we can declare without any doubt that any yogi from India that you have heard of who went out to try to become famous in the world and who's already dead was not a very good yogi. Did not have yogic powers. Therefore, don't waste time thinking about them, looking at their pictures, talking about them. They are little tiny specks of yogis. If they're dead and they couldn't sustain their body, then they are very limited power. And with that, we will stop our reading and meditate on the kingdom of Lord Ram being spread by all of you in this life and maybe the next. Any questions, comments, or reflections? Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for your inspiring and enlightening class.
Hare Krishna.
So my question is, you had been very close to Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada used to ask and demand you, I want Chaitanya Charitamrita in these many days. I'm sorry,
say it slow. Say it
Srila Prabhupada used to order you directly that I want these things in this much of time, like $80,000 for constructing this temple, or I want Chaitanya Charitamrita to be published within 2 months.
Yeah, he gave those.
So he used to give such deadlines and huge orders directly to you. And you have been very close to him. You know his mood, mission and lifestyle.
You want to know what order he gave to you?
Yeah, that's my question. So
I'll tell you the answer. I know the answer. I know the order he gave to you. And I will tell you by way of example. Srila Prabhupada used to glorify how one of the books of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur found its way into a library in Canada, in the Western world. And Prabhupada said to us, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so powerful from the spiritual world, he could have flooded the whole world with books. But then what would our service have been? So he left it for us. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada translated all these books into English. And then he wanted them in every language of the world. And he wanted all of them, sets of them, sold to every person of the world in every town and every village. So the first generation of the devotees of Prabhupada started that, only a little bit. If they had finished it, what would there be for you to do? No, there's much more to do that has been left for you. That's what has been given to you as the order. You keep going to every soul that doesn't know these books. In every generation, there's a whole new crop of souls taking birth as humans. And as long as these souls keep taking birth as humans, it is the mission of this movement to flood them with love of God. There is no limit to this service. There is no limit. Just do it as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And whatever you don't finish, those who come after you will have to do. But I will tell you this. I think I've said this once before. When we first started book distribution in America, going out, not selling to stores, but actually just going up to strangers and talking them into wanting spiritual knowledge and talking them into wanting to improve their lives and giving them the book that would help them improve their lives, all the things we used to say. It was some special arrangement of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta that there was instant ecstasy. Those first book distributors, instant ecstasy. we were like madmen. I tell you this honestly, and people who saw us thought we were mad. The way we were talking and acting, and hey, we couldn't get enough of this. So, that started building up 1971, 1972. Then we had the famous, we called it the Christmas Marathon in 1972. One temple, almost 18,000 books and magazines in 3 days. It changed the world. So anyway, now is 1973. Prabhupada came for his visit. I was the Sankirtan leader, as well as one of the book distributors. And every night, when all the distributors were finished, I would write their names and their scores, just like you read in the morning for the deity's pleasure. So I would wait up, write the names and the scores, and then go over to Srila Prabhupada's quarters and wait at the bottom of the stairs for either his secretary, Brahmananda Swami, or his servant, Shruti Kirti, to come down and take this piece of paper and bring it to Prabhupada. And I would wait about a half an hour, just in case Prabhupada said anything. They would come back down, knowing that I wasn't going to leave, and they would tell me. And I was intoxicated. I was like a person on the highest intoxicants. That's how I was a little bit like that. So anyway, one day, after days and days and days of this, Prabhupada said to Brahmananda, he said, "Who is this Rameswar?" And when I heard him say those words, oh my God, my guru knows me. I nearly fainted. And then about a week later, because I'm doing this every night, Brahmananda came back down with the report that I had written. And at the bottom, there was a note written by hand by Srila Prabhupada himself to give back to us. This was like a message from God. This was like, we couldn't even imagine this. In his own handwriting, he said, "My dear boys and girls, you have sacrificed so much despite all inconvenience, have tolerated so much to spread the glories of Lord Chaitanya and distribute these books. Surely my Guru Maharaj, who was our spiritual grandfather, surely my Guru Maharaj will be pleased upon you 1,000 times more than me. And that is my satisfaction." So I tell you this. Those who were not yet initiated by Prabhupada but came after, he is your spiritual grandfather. So if Prabhupada, what's the difference between Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta? We can't begin to test or measure how great each one of them is. We have no ability. But Prabhupada said, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta will be pleased 1,000 times more than me. So I tell you this, whoever your guru is, it doesn't matter. The difference between them and Prabhupada is so amazing that it's not that Prabhupada will be 1,000 times more pleased upon you than your guru. No, 1,000,000 times. 1,000,000 times more pleased than your own guru. That's how much love for every soul in the whole world for 10,000 years. Prabhupada's love, it reaches out to every soul for thousands of years. Who has that kind of love? So your spiritual grandfather will be pleased upon you 1,000,000 times more than your guru. And that is your guru's satisfaction. You're going to get much more mercy from Prabhupada than I got. Just wait for it. Make yourself ready for it. Be receptive to it. Because that mercy is coming to all of you. Much more than I can imagine. Grandfather is always so kind compared to father. You have no idea what awaits you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki. His